Wow. Be with you in a moment, but it looks like there's some breaking news that Amari Cooper has been dealt to the Dallas Cowboys. All right, we are live. I am Ari Temkin, and just learning of the news that the Cowboys have made a trade. They've traded a first-round pick to the Oakland Raiders for Amari Cooper. Something that we had heard was rumored to be true, but now is true. According to multiple reports, Adam Schefter and others saying that the Cowboys have traded a first-round pick to the Raiders for Amari Cooper. So what do you think of this deal? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's a good deal for the Cowboys? A little too late. Obviously, the Cowboys figured they did have a need for a number one overall wide receiver, and they've got their guy in a 24-year-old that has 2,000-yard receiving seasons already in his career. It's a lot to give up in a first-round pick, but obviously the Cowboys figured with what he's already produced and what he could produce in the future that this would be a great move for them. Also, apparently, according to, let's see here, Adam Schefter, Patrick Peterson's cousin, reporting that Patrick Peterson wants to head to the Saints. But right now, the big news is that the Cowboys have traded for Amari Cooper, meaning the Raiders now have 3 first-round draft picks in the 2019 draft, and the latest being Amari Cooper. Your thoughts, your feelings about this trade? Look, it's a lot to give up. It's a first-round draft pick that they're giving up. But at this point, the Cowboys made their move to get a number one wideout, and they have that. Obviously, there's a lot of Cowboys fans who figured maybe they could take their quarterback of the future with that pick, with their first-round draft pick. But instead, it looks like they are going to get Amari Cooper with their first-round draft pick. What do you think about this move? Jeremy Mandel says, yes, they got Roy Williams. Not necessarily the same trade. Walt Chisholm says, what the hell, Ari? How could you let this happen? John and Meg says, love it. If Amari was in the first round this coming draft, that's who he'd take anyways. Johnny Kaz says, hate this team. Just when I thought this organization, just when I thought I couldn't hate this organization anymore, they go and trade their first round pick for freaking Amari Cooper. All right, I'm Ari Temkin. This is Phantom. We are putting you at the center of the Dallas sports discussion. Again, breaking news, Amari Cooper traded to the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys give up a first-round draft pick in order to do it. What do you think of this move? Personally, I think it's a lot to give up, but I do like the move because he's 24 years old and he already has 2 1,000-yard receiving seasons under his belt. You can look at his lack of production the last couple of years and say, how could they be trading for a guy on his way down? But I think that is attributable to the regression at quarterback and the regression of the offense as a whole. Obviously, the Oakland Raiders are in full rebuild mode, so that's why this deal happens. The Raiders are completely unloading. John Gruden wants to rebuild this team from the ground up, so they trade Khalil Mack for 2 first-round picks and now get a first-round pick back in exchange for Amari Cooper, a guy that was, a top 5 pick just a few years ago. He is the last rookie receiver to have a 1,000-yard receiving season in his rookie season. And look, I'm not sure what the rest of the deal is, but if it's Amari for a first-round draft pick straight up, then the Cowboys got their guy. They got their first-round, their number 1 overall receiver. And obviously, they're not going to have a first-round draft pick in next year's draft in order to address potential other concerns. I know a lot of Cowboys fans thought maybe they'd be taking a quarterback with their first-round draft pick. I know a lot of Cowboys fans hoped maybe they'd be taking a quarterback with their first-round draft pick in 2019. But now they've traded, it appears, their first-round draft pick for next season to the Oakland Raiders for Amari Cooper. Again, I'm sure there's a lot of disappointment from some Cowboys fans. But look, this is a really, really good receiver who is still very, very young. The idea that he doesn't like football, I think it's something that obviously that the Cowboys Sorry, I think obviously it's something the Cowboys looked into because we heard reports all this week that they were trying to do their due diligence to figure out what this guy was and if he really not like football. Again, I never really bought that idea, especially because I mean, did he like football when he had a 1,600-yard receiving season his second year? But trying to get to his career stats right now. But yeah, I mean, he is an impressive receiver who creates separation off the line of scrimmage. He's the type of receiver you covet as a true number one that has a dramatic domino impact on the rest of the team. This is what the Cowboys were looking for. They didn't think they had it in Dez Bryant anymore. They said all offseason they didn't need a number one. They were wrong. And now they go and they shop and find one. And ultimately, it's hard to find a receiver in the first round who you could turn into a legitimate number one off the bat. So the Cowboys didn't think they wanted to spend another draft pick on it. Again, this is an organization that in recent history has not gone out and brought in outside free agents, really not since Brandon Carr is the first guy seemingly they brought in outside the organization as new blood, as it were. They in recent history have not gone outside the organization to improve their roster, but they're doing so in a big way today by getting Amari Cooper. Again, his rookie year in 2015, 72 receptions for 1070 and 6 touchdowns. His second year, 2016, 83 receptions for 1153 and 5 touchdowns. And now in 2017, just 48 receptions for 680 and 7. And now already this season, 22 receptions for 280 and a touchdown. So again, a guy that in 4 seasons in the NFL is not yet 25 years old and has recorded already 2 1,000-yard receiving seasons. And the Cowboys give up a first-round draft pick in order to get Amari Cooper from the Oakland Raiders. My guess is the Cowboys knew the entire time they could get Amari for number one. They just wanted to make sure that they did their proper diligence to figure out what kind of guy they were getting, and then ultimately they figured out that they liked this guy, and even with the rumors about him not liking football that are out there, they felt good about where they were at and trying to make this deal. Let's see here, trying to get to the comments as quickly as I can. Hit the share button, but we're talking through this as the Cowboys make a trade for Amari Cooper for a first-round draft pick from the Oakland Raiders. They now have their number one wide receiver, so we'll see if what kind of an impact this has on the rest of the roster. My guess is the corresponding move they'll make is to cut Allen Hurns. Here's a guy that has not been very good for this team and is probably dead weight at this point. So my guess is they'll clear up the roster space available by cutting Allen Hurns. But obviously, trading a first-round draft pick for Amari Cooper at this point is the move that they made. Robert Imler says, hopefully the change of scenery gets Cooper rejuvenated. A very young and talented player still makes Dallas better. We'll see how much better. Agreed. Again, this is a guy that I said earlier on my show that if you have to give up a first-round draft pick, I mean, it'd be tough. I'd give up a second if I could. But obviously the Cowboys felt like they wanted to make this move, go out there and give up their first-round draft pick in order to do it, and that's the decision they made. I know there are probably a lot of Cowboys fans out there that feel like they don't have the right quarterback, if they give up next year's first, it just extends another year where they're not able to spend a first-round draft pick trying to get that next quarterback, whoever that guy's going to be. You look through the NFL, the majority of starting quarterbacks in the NFL are first-round draft picks for a reason. It's hard to find guys late in the draft to play the quarterback position, and that's obviously what the Cowboys felt. Let's see here. Again, I'll be with you for another few minutes here on Phantom, but just trying to break through the breaking news. The Cowboys have acquired Amari Cooper from the Oakland Raiders for a first-round draft pick, and we're talking about it with you on Phantom, which is putting you at the center of the Dallas sports discussion. I'm Ari Temkin. You can catch me as part of the 105.3 The Fan pregame show and postgame show on the Dallas Cowboys Radio Network. We spent a decent amount of time this past week before the game yesterday talking about this as a possibility. It seemed like, from everybody inside the organization, Brad Sham, Brian Broaddus, people that had pretty good knowledge of what's going on inside the Cowboys organization, it seemed like this was a very real possibility. They were definitely interested in Amari Cooper. They were doing whatever work they could behind the scenes to figure out if this guy was the right guy, the right fit, if he clearly loved football, those kinds of things. And obviously they felt pretty good about the type of guy they were getting. That's why they went ahead and made the move. Matthew Valentini Valentin Teddy says, if up all the picks, Cowboys can't and don't know how to draft, perfectly fine with this pick. Yeah, I think the Cowboys in recent history have been significantly better than they were in the past at drafting. But look, Daniel Gomez on the Dallas Cowboys America's team page says first round pick is too much, especially when it's looking like it's going to be a top 5 pick the way this season's looking. I don't know that I would say that. I mean, this is a team that I think looked on its way to 8-8, but the reality of the situation is it's a very winnable division, and the Cowboys probably felt like heading into the bye week, this is the right time to make this kind of a move, where they've got now a full week plus, all of next week to get Amari Cooper implemented into what they're doing. Reminder, the Cowboys will have, practices this week, so they bring in Amari Cooper this week. He gets acclimated to what they're doing. I'm sure he'll be working next week during the off week, throughout the week to get up to speed, and then they don't play again until Monday. So they don't play, the Cowboys are now off until a week, or rather 2 weeks from today. So, they probably felt like they have sufficient time off between now and their next game to get him implemented into what they're doing. Yeah, Chris Bennett says John Gruden now with 3 first-round draft picks in the 2019 draft. He's got the Bears draft pick, the Raiders draft pick, and now the Cowboys draft pick. And the Raiders looks like are going to be picking in the top 5. So John Gruden is blowing this thing up. He wants his guys. He's going to start over. He's now got 3 first-round draft picks in order to do it. He gave up Amari Cooper, now Khalil Mack, but a tremendously ballsy move by the Cowboys, who we have not seen them make these moves in recent history. These are moves the Cowboys made when Jerry was ultimately running the show without much, without much dissension from the other guys in the front office. But in recent history, this is not the type of move the Cowboys have made, quite frankly. The Cowboys have not been making, these kinds of moves in recent history. And, they've been very reserved about the moves they make. They're very... not willing seemingly to go out on a limb and make these kinds of moves as far as bringing in guys from outside the organization. Again, you look at what the Cowboys have done, how they built their team in recent history. They draft and develop, and they don't really spend in free agency. The last guy that they spent in a big way in free agency to bring in from outside the organization was Brandon Carr. So now, in all these recent seasons, they haven't really spent much. But after this season, they finally have all this dead money off the books. Tony Romo's money, Des Bryant's money, Jason Witten's money, all the dead money comes off the book after this season. So they probably looked at it, made sense from a financial standpoint. Amari Cooper plays out this year, plus next year at $14 million, and I'm sure they're going to work out a long-term contract for him to kick in after next season when the Cowboys have the space in order to do it. Don Yates says Dak can't throw more than 20 yards, and he can't read his progressions. And certainly I think, there's questions about how good at reading defenses Dak Prescott truly is. But ultimately I think there are some questions about how good this receiving core was and how good it could be if you added a guy like an Amari Cooper to it. So, look, I'm excited to see what kind of offense the Cowboys now have, having a legitimate number 1 wideout as an X receiver. We know Cole Beasley is going to be a really, really effective slot receiver. The problem was in the past, he's been the lone guy this season that's their number 1, but he's more of a complimentary guy anyways. So now you bring in Amari Cooper, you have a legitimate number 1 on the outside with Amari Cooper. Now Cole Beasley is going to be impacted dramatically because of it, and obviously Michael Gallup too. So the Cowboys feel like they made a move for their entire offense that will rejuvenate this offense that's not been very good. But there's major concerns, obviously, I would imagine, from Cowboys fans everywhere hearing this news about, all right, well, what about the quarterback position? Is this position solidified? And does this move mean that the Cowboys feel like this position is solidified, which is kind of surprising considering there seem to be obvious questions about Dak Prescott's ability as a legitimate number 1 quarterback and his ability to read defenses and adjust, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, Eric Doxson says, bad trade people. Ryan England says, I'm willing to give Dak a chance at number 1. Johnny Kaz says, let's not spend money in free agency and give away draft picks. Brilliant. Look, again, I think this is not a move the Cowboys have been making in recent history. This is a move that clearly makes their offense better. This is a move that they needed to make at some point they needed a legitimate number one. You weren't going to find that guy in the draft because it takes a few years for wide receivers to develop. The last 1,000-yard receiver as a rookie in the NFL was Amari Cooper. So you look at last year, you look at the year before that, there were no rookie wide receivers that had 1,000-yard receiving seasons, their rookie seasons. So that's how good of a receiver he is. He's a really, really polished route runner. He is a really, really good receiver as far as getting open off the line of scrimmage. So this is obviously huge news for the Cowboys and their offense, as it's been, there's been issues with it. The offensive line has been great. Quarterback has been great. Receivers have been great. Play calling and coaching hasn't been great. But the Cowboys are, at least from a personnel standpoint, putting themselves in position to have as good of a team as they possibly can. Matthew Valentinetti says, who really wanted Cooper, Steven or Jerry? I'd imagine everybody did. Again, I think this is not an organization that's run the way the Cowboys were run in the last 10, 15 years. This is Will McClay, Stephen Jones, Jerry Jones, Jason Garrett, all part of the decision-making. So you better believe that this move is a product of all of those decisions that were made. This might have been a move that they had made up their mind, going into the game on Sunday. I think the Cowboys knew what it was going to take. They knew it was going to take a first-round draft pick. They knew the ball was in their court in order to make that happen, and they were kind of probably waiting to see what they heard about Amari Cooper from people who knew him. Apparently, there were rumors about they're not sure if he loves football or not, but obviously the Cowboys they spent the last week putting in the work to see if that was true, to verify or see if those rumors were false. And obviously they felt comfortable with the type of guy they were getting, and Amari Cooper, who is extremely talented and proven number one wide receiver. Is 25 years old, already has 2,000-yard receiving seasons under his belt, and is a dramatic upgrade for this team at that position, and fulfills a very glaring hole that they had and said they didn't need this entire offseason, but were obviously lying. They tried to fulfill that need through free agency. They tried with Sammy Watkins, who signed for more money elsewhere, and so now they go out and they spend a first-round draft pick on Amari Cooper. Ruben Martinez says, do you think a first was too much to give? I would have gone with a third, LOL. Look, he's 24 years old. He's played 4 seasons in the NFL, and he has 2,000-yard receiving seasons. So I don't necessarily believe that a first-round draft pick is too much to give up for a guy that's a legitimate number one wideout who has 2,000-yard receiving seasons in 4 years in the NFL. Last year was a major disappointment for him, only 684 yards, 289 already this year, but it's obvious that offense took a major step backwards last year, and the Cowboys feel like they get him into their offense with their schemes, with their system, with what they have. They feel like he can be significant. He can be back to being a 1,000-yard receiving season. And look, that's the end of the day, that's what the Cowboys made this deal about. Do they think that he is worth giving up next year's first-round draft pick? And I'd say certainly there's an argument to be made that he is, but there's also an argument to be made that they probably should have used next year's first-round draft pick on a quarterback. Because I'm not necessarily sold on Dak Prescott as the guy, but this move certainly seems to indicate that they believe Dak Prescott is the guy. Or at least they're going to be giving him at least another year to prove it. Because again, you survey the landscape of the NFL, the best way to getting a franchise quarterback is by taking one in the first round. The majority of NFL starting quarterbacks are first-round draft picks. Just look, and the majority of those guys are top 5 picks. Brian Walker says, this is a good move by the Cowboys. The Eagles were looking to add a receiver as well. And it's funny because if the Eagles make this move, everybody's like, oh God, look how great of a move this is. I mean, the Bears gave up 2 first-round draft picks for a 27-year-old in Khalil Mack. This is a guy that's only 24, has 2,000-yard receiving seasons already in 4 seasons, and is, as far as who is available, the best receiver on the market. And certainly a guy that you look and say has the talent to be one of the 5 best wideouts in the game of football. And that's probably why that's why the Cowboys make this move. They make this move because they believe he can be one of the 5 best wide receivers in the game of football, and because they believe Dak Prescott is the guy. He just needs a number 1 wideout. And maybe he is. maybe he is, and maybe it will take having Amari Cooper as their X, and then, Cole Beasley in the slot, and then Michael Gallup and the rest kind of falling in line behind them. But look, the Cowboys had a glaring hole without a number one wideout. They now have, when you look at Amari Cooper, Zeke Elliott, their offensive line, and Dak Prescott, what they feel like is a pretty formidable offense. And obviously there's question marks about their coach, about their offensive coordinator, but make no mistake about it. If the Cowboys miss the playoffs this season, Jason Garrett will not be back as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and they will be looking for a new head coach without a first-round draft pick. Michael Donovan says make Tony Romo the head coach. I don't think that'd be a good move. Eric Doxson says, I love your enthusiasm, Amari or Amari. It's Ari, but either way, it's all good. Tyler Cutright says they're going to cut Hearns. I believe so. Danny Easley says our whole wide receiving course now are 25 and fresh with Dak. I like it a lot. Look, again, there's a lot to like about this move. I'm sure some Cowboys fans heard it and thought it was bad because they're giving up a first-round draft pick, but he's a guy that's not even 25 years old who already has 2 1,000-yard receiving seasons under his belt. This is a guy that is under contract until after next season for pretty cheap, and then obviously they're going to extend him beyond that because you don't trade a first-round draft pick unless you're going to invest a pretty good chunk of change into him as the number one wide receiver in your team. I think the Cowboys thought they needed a number one. They just didn't know who that was. They didn't think it was Dak. They didn't think it was Dez Bryant. So they bring in a legitimate number one wideout in Amari Cooper, and that's what we have today. I'll be with you for the next couple of minutes, so if you've got any questions or comments or thoughts, feel free to get those out there. A reminder that I'm Ari Temkin from 105.3 The Fan. You can also catch me as part of Showtime each and every day right here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, on Phantom. Showtime every day at 12 o'clock Central. So it's the most interactive Cowboys show out there every day at 12 o'clock noon Central Time right here on Phantom. So make sure to go like the page at facebook.com/watch Phantom. Renee Amezquita says he's a deep threat, and now Jerry can have an excuse to not give Dak a big contract if this goes south. Sure, I think in many ways this gives the Cowboys the opportunity to give a true indication of what type of quarterback Dak Prescott can be. Obviously, there's major question marks about his ability, and those came to the forefront again after another abysmal performance on offense on the road against Washington. The Cowboys feel like, one, Dak's the guy, and two, that they were a number one wideout away and that Amari Cooper could be that guy. Danny Easley says, so they're going to place Gallup outside and make Beasley and Tavon, when he's back, be slots. Yeah, I mean, I think you have, you've got Amari Cooper's your X. Cole Beasley is your slot receiver. You probably then put Michael Gallup as far as the the opposite end, the weak side number one wide receiver was the Y. So I think that's where the Cowboys are thinking. That's how this thing will shake out. And obviously they feel good about where they are on offense with their offensive line, even though it had a bad game on Sunday. But that they felt like some of the issues that they've had on offense could be made up by having a legitimate number one. All right, so again, just want to summarize. Cowboys trade a first-round draft pick to the Oakland Raiders for Amari Cooper, a pretty stunning move for a team that has not made a lot of stunning moves in recent history. They did, obviously, for a long time under Jerry Jones. They'd make the splash move almost every year, but they haven't in a long time. They finally do. They make a trade in season. They get their number one wide receiver in Amari Cooper, a 24-year-old who will not turn 25 until the mid-season, has 2,000-yard receiving seasons already under his belt, had a disappointing year last year, but you could attribute some of that to what they had issues on offense with the quarterback in Oakland and all the other things that go along with it. This is a guy that's still unbelievably talented, great at the release, getting open, off line of scrimmage, and so Dak Prescott gets his number one. The Cowboys get the number one wide receiver, something they sorely need, and they get it for a first-round draft pick. Obviously, it's a move that comes with risk. The Cowboys will now be without a first-round draft pick, and they have a lot of holes to fill, but certainly one of those holes now is not at wide receiver. Again, I'm Ari Temkin. Make sure, if you don't already, like the Phantom page. Go to facebook.com/watch Phantom. And, of course, make sure to go over to YouTube and like our YouTube page. Subscribe over there for the latest on the Dallas Cowboys and everything Dallas sports, because that's what Phantom does, puts you at the center of the Dallas sports discussion. On YouTube, real quickly, Electric Chicken says, I think the Cowboys will be better going forward, but this trade probably won't pay off right away. Perhaps, I think the Cowboys look at this and say that it will pay off right away. At least they're hoping so. They probably think the division's very winnable and that this will be the difference between winning the division and potentially not winning the division. And obviously, we will see if that's the case. Carlos Diaz says Roy Williams trade all over again. I just don't agree with that. I get why people think it's similar, but I'd say Roy Williams at the time of his trade to the Cowboys, first of all, didn't they give up multiple first-round picks for Roy Williams? That was the number one thing. And number two is he was probably in the middle towards the end of his career at that point. He wasn't 24 years old and on his way up to being, at 24 years old, there's still a lot of good football left for this guy that's already had 2,000-yard receiving seasons. So that's what I like about it. It's obviously, again, a move that is not completely without risk. There's obviously major risk involved when you trade away draft picks, but I like the move by the Cowboys to solidify a position that was of drastic need for this team to get a number one wide receiver. I still think, obviously, people have question marks about the quarterback position, and maybe the Cowboys do too, but certainly think that putting Amari Cooper in this offense will help to figure out if Dak Prescott is the guy. All right, again, I'm Ari Temkin. More on this tomorrow at 12 noon as part of Showtime. So if you've not yet checked it out, make sure to check out Showtime on Phantom each and every single day. But for now, I'm out.